get out here a little bit farther away from civilization, and then I'll park the rig, throw in my pack, and start hiking and looking for a shelter. Okay, so it's Saturday afternoon, and I'm out here on the desert flat. Walking out across this, it's pretty much level, fairly level, little kind of rolling hills, and then every once in a while a little broken rim rock. But my goal tonight, and right now it's about 4:30, so I have about 2.5 hours of light left, is to identify a spot that makes sense to make a shelter. So what I'm looking for is anything that can help me with that process, like a windbreak, a downed tree, something I can work off of that'll save me some calories in the shelter building process. Okay, so it's now about 5 o'clock and I'm still looking for an ideal spot to have a shelter. I haven't found exactly what I'm looking for, so I'm just gonna have to make do with what I have. So sometime within the next, I've given myself a time limit, so within the next 20 minutes I'm going to identify a spot and start building my shelter. That should give me 2 hours to construct it, which should be just about enough time given what I have to work with out here. All right, so I've been looking around and I think this is about the best I can come up with. The reason I'm picking it is because the ground is a little bit grassy and there's some moss there. That'll help give me an insulating layer from the ground. Also, I can build off of these trees. The wind's coming from back behind these trees, so I'll run my rear pole between these two trees and then build the rest of the shelter leaning off to the front outside of that. So it's not ideal, but it's about the best thing that I have to work with, and now I only have about an hour and a half of daylight left, so I got to get cracking. All right, it's not pretty, but here's the basic framework. I might add in a few more pieces of framework to the shelter, and then I'll start piling some green boughs on it. So here's my opening in the front. I'll build my fire right in front of that entrance. You can see I've got kind of a narrow door opening, and when I fill in the backside in there, it's going to be just about the right size for me to sleep lengthwise in there. So what I've got left to do is fill it in and fill in the back sides and the top, and I'll be done. So I'm going to get to work. Okay, so you can see it's starting to take shape. I'm about 45 minutes in. The sun is setting and have a few clouds moving in, but as you can see, I've got a basic frame. I've started to overlay it with mostly green juniper boughs because that's about all I have to work with. So I'm running back and forth a lot because I'm trying to take just a few branches off of each green tree. So because junipers are a really hardy species, so as long as I only take a few branches off of each one and I don't cut the trunk of the tree, they'll be just fine. My shelter's about as done as it's going to get done for the night. I would continue to add some more juniper boughs, tightening it up, but as it is, there's plenty to block the wind from me. You can see I built a little reflective wall from the fire in front of it. So if it was going to get really cold tonight, I would build a fire there and that wall would reflect the heat back up into my shelter. So you can kind of see, I showed you guys earlier, I built a framework and then basically just filled it in wiki up style with juniper boughs. Now the challenge out here in the desert country is that most of the stuff that we have to work with, like this juniper, it's not leaves, it's not thick, so it takes a lot of material to stop water and stop wind. But the nice thing about this situation here is is I built back up against this tree right there, and that's where the prevailing wind is coming from. So that tree and the structure of the tree will actually fend off part of any moisture and or wind that's coming through. So you can see from the side view that that tree actually extends out quite a ways beyond the shelter. In essence, what that tree is doing is acting as a weather block for me. So my shelter doesn't have to be as tight because this tree is going to take the brunt of the any weather that comes through. So you can see I'm over here on the back side of the shelter, and you can see that tree extends quite a ways back behind the shelter and quite a ways above it. So any weather has got to penetrate that tree before it can even get to the shelter. Here you can kind of see the back wall of the shelter. And again, I just used debris, standing dead wood, really everything I could to try and fill in holes and block the wind. I mostly was concerned with around the base of it. So around the very base, you can see there's absolutely no light coming through because when I lay down, if I'm attempting to sleep at night, that's where the wind is going to bother me. And as long as I have a little low wall that has no wind coming through, I'll be able to sleep warmly. So let's go inside it. Hopefully this will focus in here, but you can see, especially down around the base, I made sure there's none to very little air gaps. Now, maybe you can hear the wind noise on the camera right now because I'm outside of the shelter. I go in here and it's absolutely silent. Just to give you guys an idea of scale, this is how big the shelter is, and my plan is I will lay in here sideways just like this. I'm back underneath the lip. I can go back further into the shelter, but this is just about perfect. I actually have a little bit more room down there at my feet. And this is how I would spend the night. I can sit here, I'll have my fire, and I'll be able to comfortably sit in here out of the weather and enjoy my evening. And then looking out the front of the shelter, I built that little reflective wall of rock right there. And that's just going to keep the heat kind of reflecting back up on me in the night. I built my fire just far enough away from the shelter so that I don't have to worry about the shelter catching on fire at night, but also close enough so that I'd get the heat up into the entrance here. Alright, I'm going to get a fire started here and use a little bit of this sagebrush bark for tinder. Got me a little bird's nest out of some grass. Alright, so this concludes my SE6 shelter building giveaway. I think I covered site selection and I don't remember what else I was supposed to cover, but just to summarize, I picked this site for the fact that there were these two trees I could build off of that would do two things. Number one, they would allow me to have to spend less energy constructing my shelter, and number two, they would provide some cover just because it's so difficult to make a waterproof shelter out here. And all in all, it took me about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to build the shelter. It's just getting dark. Yeah, so I think I'm actually going to strip this thing down, hike out of here tonight. My truck's about 2 to 3 miles away, so I'll do a little night navigation on the way back. That'll be a good exercise for me, and it's always cool moving at night too out here in the desert. You never know. what you're going to run into. So many of the animals are so much more active at night. Man, I love it out here. I hope you guys enjoyed, maybe even learned something. Feel free to ask me any questions, make suggestions, and I look forward to seeing the other entries in the SE6 giveaway.